started with the Pentium 4 Gateway E4100 computer, and I installed DOS 6.22 on it. I configured the hardware in the config.sys and the autoexec.bat files. A CD was created in Windows to copy all of the MAME software to the ZVG computer. I plugged the devices together, and it was showing a picture. Next was preparing the cabinet. I wired an outlet into the power supply and mounted my hardware in the cabinet. Next, I built a small amplifier from a kit and wired it back to the mini plug. Next was making the PC come on when the power was switched on in the game. I set it up in the BIOS, but if that wasn't an option for you, I found a way of using a capacitor instead. Next was the coin door lights. And then I wired the control panel, first the grounds, and then the control leads. Everything was ready except the spinner. Then I programmed the iPack and I mounted it. The individual game controls were programmed as well. Next was an Atari spinner that I interfaced to the computer with a Hagstrom ME5 adapter. And finally, we had a fully working game. So you're going to hit Control-C when you get to this line. Got 5 seconds to do it in. Terminate batch job, yes. Get you back to a C prompt. Now I'm going to do a CLS so I can clear the screen, so I can see everything at the top. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to back up our autoexec.bat file. You do that by copying it, autoexec.bat space autoexec.bak. So we're going to say copy autoexec.bat space autoexec.bak. This makes a copy of it, so we have a backup copy of everything just like it is right now. This way we can't make any mistakes. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look and see what we really have to try to worry about tweaking. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is edit autoexec.bat. Okay, this is our autoexec.bat file, and I think it's the biggest thing that people have seemed to be having problems with. The two things that seem to be the most biggest problem is the Sound Blaster and the mouse drivers. I had quite a bit of trouble trying to get the mouse drivers to work when I first started with it. One of the things you need to know is that what you do is you set up multiple directories on your machine, and in those directories you put in the different mouse drivers. So if I was going to try a different mouse driver, what I would do at this point is that I had this driver that's sitting here waiting to go, but I can just put the word rem in front of it. Okay. Now we're not loading that mouse driver anymore. Okay. When this machine boots, it's just going to ignore that whole mouse driver line. It's still in there, so if we want to turn it back on again, we can go and do that. Okay, I've made a directory called mouse, and I've copied all the mouse drivers I could find on the internet into there. Earlier on in the video, we gave you some places to get that and all these drivers, and this basically took a copy of all of them and put them in one directory. Now, what you're going to try to do is we're going to try to change the different directories, and we're using the 602 right now, the mouse 602, but we're going to try to change it to the mouse 610 driver to see how that one works. So what we'll do is we'll look in the mouse 610 driver, and you'll see that now we're in mouse 610. We're going to do a dir, and now we can see there's two different files in here. When you see a mouse.com, that means it's a driver that you're going to load through the autoexec.bat. You see a mouse.sys, it's a device driver, and that means it's going to be loaded through the config.sys. So you would go into the config.sys and you'd say device equals mouse.sys, and you put the full directory path into it, which in this case would be c:\mouse /mouse/mouse610. So what we're going to do is we're just going to try the autoexec.bat version to see how that functions with our environment. So what we'll first do is we'll do mouse.com and mouse.sys, and what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our autoexec.bat. We're going to edit colon backslash auto exec.bat, and press enter. And we need to remember that we're in mouse 610, so we need to remember that. So now we're going to go into our mouse our mouse line here that we've remmed out, and we'll leave that in there. We'll just put another one in, and we'll say C colon backslash mouse. Let's put in caps lock so it's consistent. Backslash mouse 610 backslash mouse. And we'll do the same thing up here. We have our set mouse equals set mouse equals 602, and we'll put a rem in front of that. And drop another line in there, and we'll say our set mouse equals C colon backslash mouse backslash mouse 610. Okay. Okay, so now we got our lines edited, and we will save it. Alt F, and then save. Can't really see it the way I have the screen pointed. And save. Okay, now we're going to do is reboot. Okay, so now we're going to reboot. Control Alt Delete. We already saved our file. We're going to abort our routine again, and what we can notice in here is that what we're looking at is right up here. When the machine booted, it said right along there, it said mouse 610 mouse, and we noticed the driver loaded. It's usually a good sign. You want the line, and you notice the one below it didn't give us any information below it because that's the one we remmed out, so it's not actually loading. So now we can do, basically using this technique, we can load one mouse driver to another and see how they work, because you never know which one's going to work the way you want it to. So let's just reboot the machine again, and we notice that our menu down the bottom says one-axis spinner control activated. And that's a really good sign that the spinner is in place and working. Now what I found with this driver was it wasn't all that controllable. It was a little jumpy. So I don't feel so comfortable this is a good driver to be using. So I'm going to try another driver. So we've redirected ourselves back to the CT mouse directory. And we notice inside of here we have a ctmouse.txt file. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in edit space ctmouse.txt. And that's going to give us a nice way of reading about this mouse driver, Qt mouse driver version 1.9. So it gives us all the details about this driver back in 2001. And it basically says how it works and gives us some more details, and we can scroll through and read how the driver works. So let's go back, and we know it's called CT mouse. We do the Alt F, and we'll exit. Now we're going to edit the autoexec.bat. Remember that's in the root drive, so we want to do edit C colon backslash autoexec.bat. Okay, that takes us into the autoexec.bat. Now, from here we can go in and we can change this set mouse command and say mouse. Instead of saying mouse 610, we'll say CT mouse. And then come down here, we'll say CT mouse backslash CT mouse. Okay, it doesn't upper and lowercase, it really doesn't matter. It just looks better if you do it the other way. But we'll save it, and we'll F and exit. Okay, we saved it. It's been edited, and we're going to reboot. Control delete. So, what you're looking at is the screen I got when I selected the Tempest mouse from the menu. Yeah, this one wasn't compatible. I got nothing on my screen. It's a completely empty screen. And guess what? Control delete. It doesn't work. So this is an example of what can go really wrong. Now, how wrong has it gone? How bad is this situation, right? Okay, nice about DOS is it turns off really well. So we're going to turn it back on again. And when we get to this line, we're going to hit Control C and terminate our batch job like it asks. And how bad are we off? Okay, so we edit our auto exec.bat. And we decide, okay, well that one didn't work at all. And now we just change to one that did work. Okay? And then we're on our way. So we can go right through here now, since we've already created these lines that we don't need anymore. We can just go through here and delete this other stuff off. VectorMAME. And that one. And get rid of this one. We're all set. All F, save, boom. And we're back to where we can boot. Should be able to boot, and it should work just fine. Now, one other thing we could do, we could have done instead. Remember we made our backup copy in the beginning. Now we're just going to delete our autoexec.bat, autoexec.bat, and we're going to rename, which is REN, it's a shortcut for that, autoexec.bat to autoexec.bat. You do a dir, and we can just type in dir auto star point star, and we'll only see the autoexec.bat. So that gives us a little bit cleaner look of it. But so we've got our autoexec.bat back. If we want to just confirm it's the one we hoped it would be, autoexec.bat, and voila, there he is. He is the one we're hoping for. And at this point, all we have to do is reboot and try it again. We should be back to the way we were before, which we had a working system, so it makes no sense. But that's how you would do it. You would put your drivers in, you make your changes like that. And another thing you could do would be to open up, say, for example, the config.sys. You can see in your config.sys that you have files that you can just manipulate. You put your mouse drivers in here. If you have a sys command, so like mouse.sys, you put the full path to it in here, you should be able to run it as a device equals line. And you can also try to move it into high memory with the device high line. That might also work as well. So it's just like a matter of trial and error till you get to the place where everything works for you. So that's really all you got to do to tweak this stuff. That's the basics of tweaking this stuff. And that's going to take us out of all the autoexec and config sys driver stuff. We're done this part now. So next thing we're going to do some looking at how the menu system works. What you'll notice is there's 3 VM menu items in your DVMAME directory. There's the VMM menu exe file. That's the program that actually gets run. So we're not going to do anything with that other than run it. So we'll be doing that later. The vmmenu.ini file. Now that file contains some information that the software uses. There's also the config file. So we're going to look at what those different files do and how they work. Now looking at the vmmenu.ini file, what you're going to notice is, and we mentioned this in one of the earlier videos, we mentioned that these are all a list of all the different files and all the different software that's being used to load the different various items on the menu. Now, what's the cool part about this is that if you have any games that just aren't working, and don't think that all of them are going to work. I mean, that's one of the things. You can't go into this believing that every single game that you have drivers for is going to work properly in your machine. Some may work better than others. I've had really good luck with a lot of the Asteroids type games or any games that use those controls. Certain games don't really work real well. With no flight controller, Star Wars to me is just not playable. To me that's not playable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. Now, you might not want to do it because you want to show off the fact that your machine can run it, and I completely understand that because you can play it sort of with a joystick, but I got a real one, so I'm not going to mess with it. I'm going to get rid of those guys. So what you're going to see is I've got the two different lines here that we're going to take out. Actually, three different lines. We're going to take out the Star Wars line here. You just hold the Shift key down and press down arrow on those lines, and then you can hit delete key, and they'll go away. And we're going to do the same thing for the Empire Strikes Back line down here. And we hit delete, and they go away. So now when we save this file back out, and don't be too worried about losing this file. Yeah, you can make a backup of it before, like we did in the earlier parts. But what you could do is don't worry about it too much because you're going to have the backup copy. There's tons of copies of this on your system that came with your discs and all your download media, so you should have other copies of this anyway. But you could have backed this up beforehand using the same technique we did earlier. Hit save, and boom, that's done. So now when we bring up the machine, we should not see those items on the menu. And there we are. We have no Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back at the bottom of the list like we would before. So this is kind of neat. You can actually just fine-tune your machine to include just the games that really work well for you. Okay, so now we're going to try editing the VMMenu.cfg. So let's edit VMMenu.cfg. Some of the items you'll find in the VMMenu.cfg are, they talk about how things work. You have the stars. Yes, I have it selected. And if you noticed my menu a few seconds ago, you've seen that there were stars coming at you out of the background. The caps means you want to have it set for all caps. There's a lot of nice little menu items in here that you can do. You can go down and you'll see there's spinner type as you look down further in it. And basically you can say whether you want to swap the axis on the spinner or not. Things like that you might have to do to make it work with your environment. And basically, here's a whole bunch of different keys down here, and you'll see that there's this is what keys will affect the menu. So these are all hexadecimal codes for the keys. Now there's a manual instructions on this VM menu program, and it comes with it. So you just go out in there and search for it. You can find it, and it'll give you a lot of details about how you can set the colors and make the different things change. And this is basically where you set it up at. So if you make any changes in here, and like one of the things I've done is, another thing that I've done besides adding the stars is to make the spinner work with this menu. And the spinner type 1 in this particular case means how many axes does the spinner have. So if it had 2 axes, it would be like a mouse trackball type of thing. And I told it only has 1 axis, so it's only working horizontal axis. And an axis, of course, is up and down, and the other way is left and right, vertical, horizontal, that kind of thing. So there you go. That's basically the setting in the VMMenu.cfg. And again, if you feel like you need to make sure you save these things, remember these files are all included with your package. You've got other copies of it, on your system someplace. You've got the CD that came with the machine, with the thing, the CD we may have made when you're making this whole thing, putting this whole thing together. So there's extra copies of this stuff, so don't feel really too bad if you mess any of this stuff up. You can always go back and reload it from the original. Another item you're going to really edit a lot and want to make changes to and tweaks at is the VMM.bat file. So we'll edit that quickly. VMM.bat. The VMM.bat file is sort of an intermediary. What it does is when the VMM menu program is called, when it goes to actually load the actual game, it comes here and it uses this to force the certain parameters into the game. For example, if you go to load manually, go and load DVMAME space Star Trek, and if you were to put the parameters behind it, which would be like the the parameters behind it, like which parameters are down here, and then basically look down here, and this is what I'm talking about. These are the parameters you would type in. You type in VectorMAME. %1 stands for the name of the game, so we would put Star Trek in there, for example, if we were running Star Trek. And then -R, this is the resolution for the raster monitor. Again, not important. The ZVG 2 and 1 and 3, these can all be used for different speed changes of the system. In fact, there's a little note up here above here that says changing ZVG 1 to ZVG 2 or ZVG 3 can significantly speed up the frame rates on some PCs. So those are some things you need to play with if you're having trouble getting your games to run proper speeds. There's some frame skips, no stretch, sound card 1. This is where we set, in the earlier parts of the video, we set the sound card up. We told it to do 1, which meant that it was going to use the Sound Blaster card. So there's that one, and then there's the games that it is going to handle differently, like Barrier and Sundance, with the screen flipping thing, and it has this flipped section down here, and you need to put your same changes into there where it says sound card 1. You'll need to add that as well. Now the 640 by 480, be careful when you change it, because up further up here it does mention that you can switch the frame rates. Okay, and I made a little note there. I said was 640 by 480, and I tried the 320 by 200. But the problem is that when your raster monitor is running in the background, it can sometimes it can't do those resolutions sometimes. So I tried changing it to 320 by 200, and it was not a compatible mode. So the whole thing just didn't work. So 640 by 480, pretty common, and it's kind of like in the old days it was kind of like, I wouldn't say it was high res, but it wasn't as low as the low res of an old-fashioned raster game. So I wouldn't probably mess with it, but I would mess with the ZVG 1 and ZVG 2 and ZVG 3. I've tested it. I haven't seen any difference at all by changing it to ZVG 2 from my ZVG 1. And quite honestly, I'm not exactly sure what it does, but I'm going to try ZVG 3 and see what happens, to see if anything runs better or worse than it did before. But overall, I mean, these are all the tweaks that there are to try to get this thing to run better and more games and stuff. So, up to you. Just go in there and edit away. Again, make sure you don't worry too much about this. Again, there are copies of these that were copied when we made our CDs in the very beginning, in that past video. And you should have copies of these. Also, should be included with the menu software. And you can always if you really get desperate, you can always re-download them again from the internet and pick them up from there. So these are all the tweaks that I've got for you. I hope this helps. Okay, so we put the keyboard actually inside the game. And what this will allow us to do is we'll actually be able to pull that keyboard through the front door after we open up the front door, unlock the front door. And we can actually just pull it through that front door over there. You can see it there. It'll actually pull right through that front door. I've also included the cable for the monitor. I left the cable for the monitor attached, and it's rounding up in there. It's also easy to get to. So we can actually plug in the monitor through the front of the machine. Overall, it's been working. It works pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of good games in there, and it's really fun to play.
Thanks for following along with these tutorials. They were a blast to make, and they gave me a lot of new insight on how to do some types of video. These are the links to different hardware and software we've used in the production of this machine. Take a look out there, grab them while you can, because who knows how long they'll last. Be sure to check out our video series at pinsandviz.com. A new video is coming in 2012. This is Al Warner signing out.